Decisions.
Wait a minute. Are you still looking for cars on Carvana?
Yeah, decisions.
When I used Carvana, I found the exact car I was looking for in minutes. Bought it on the spot.
Electric or full diesel? Decisions.
Come on, you've been at it for weeks. Just buy it already.
You're right. Crossover it is. Decisions decided.
Whether you know exactly what you want or like to take your time, buy your car the convenient way with Carvana.
Bada boom, sold.
Huh?
Just sold my car on Carvana. Dropping it off and getting paid today.
Already?
What, you still haven't sold yours? You told me about it months ago. Is the offer good?
Oh, the offer's great.
Don't have another car yet?
I could trade it in for this car I love.
Come on, what are we waiting for?
You're right.
Let's go.
Whether you're looking to sell your car right now or just whenever feels right, go to Carvana.com and sell your car the convenient way. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, the show that looks at the money behind the music industry with me, Steve Lamack, and Music Allies Head of Insight, Stuart Dredge. So I've been to Minehead for the Shine Festival, and before that was on the road with Fat Dog for a couple of days, so I barely feel human at the moment, or at least not like a proper functioning human. How are you, Stuart?
I'm good. Do you know, so I'm going to sound like the opposite now. I'm back in the gym. I've managed to do that thing of not going to gym phase, then going back. And I've been listening to drum and bass, basically exclusively.
Really?
To help me run and do things and bike and stuff. So yeah, I've had quite a healthy week.
What era of drum and bass are we talking about? Are we going back to the old favourites, or have you discovered a whole new wave of drum and bass?
Do you know there is some new stuff? I'm a complete, I'm a novice really at drum and bass. So I've been kind of exploring a bunch of playlists and then just marking things I like and creating this place. I think it's a lot of old school stuff. I like the really fierce stuff that actually helps me not die on the exercise bike. So how was Fat Dog though? Because you were around the country, weren't you?
Yeah, it was terrific, really. I mean, I love getting out of London because you meet so many people. Some of them are listeners to Six Music, and a lot of listeners to this podcast, actually, particularly in Sheffield as it goes. And so it's nice. It's nice to get a different perspective on what's happening and what people like. But the gigs themselves, I mean, Fat Dog are absolutely on fire at the moment. I mean, it's in some ways it's the best it ever gets for a band at this level because all the shows are selling out. They've been working towards this. The set is, they've perfected this set that they do now, and they particularly in Sheffield. They were good in Manchester. Manchester Band on the Wall. That was a good gig, but then the following night, and they had some technical problems the following night, but once it took off, that gig, they looked like they were thoroughly enjoying it, and yeah, it's going really well for them. I allowed myself one song per night in the mosh pit right at the very end, it was very, very memorable, very good, and nice to go to the Shine Festival at the weekend where some of your old favourites were appearing. Who was good at Shine? Reverend and the Makers worked the crowd very well at Shine. But I tell you, one of the bands who always do well there, and a massive sing along, of course, there is at the end. So all together now, The Farm pulled a huge crowd.
Oh wow,
massive crowd, and then I DJ'd at 2:00 in the morning till 4. Hence, as I say, why I'm not entirely functioning as I would like. But we're back anyway. So after last week's chats with Annabella Coldrick from the Music Managers Forum, which was really good, I thought, and had some really interesting points about music management and artist development and how managers are paid. If you missed it, do have a listen. I think it's worth it. After that, though, that means we have a fortnight's worth of news to bring you in this episode, including what sort of money Spotify bigwigs might trouser after the company released its latest financial report. Also, how much did UK music contribute to the British economy last year? And the Grateful Dead speak from the grave. Where shall we start with pop and politics? This has been a big story this week, reported extensively in response to the government select committee's report on the grassroots music scene. The government itself has now come back with its own thoughts, and they've accepted some of the select committee's recommendations, dismissed one or two others. But if you're new to all this, I mean, we covered this at the time. It comes up a lot on this programme, actually. But the DCMS, that's the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, set up a special committee earlier in the year to look into the challenges facing the grassroots music scene, from venues through to artists and promoters. And they took an awful lot of evidence from a lot of people involved in music at the grassroots level. They then published their findings, which they then give to the ministers and officials at DCMS to see which of their recommendations would be accepted and taken on by government. And now, after a few months waiting, the new government has come back with its own thoughts based on what the select committee had found, and they've set out what they feel they would like to see happen next. Amongst the endorsement, well, the headline-grabbing recommendation from government is that they would like to see the implementation of an industry-led levy on stadium and arena tickets to help fund grassroots music. I mean, I know you've looked through this yourself. Before I wade in, what did you make of the government report? And then I'll give you what I have.
Yeah, it was it was quite governmenty in the sense that it says lots of positive things while carefully making sure it's not going to commit to anything it doesn't want to do. So I think there was backing saying grassroots venues do need support. We accept that. And like you say, the levy is the big thing. And it was very much like, we think it's a great idea. This should happen. And it was actually quite strong saying this should happen. It wasn't just like, it's a good idea. And this should be industry led. So the government is essentially saying, you as an industry need to get together and agree how to make this work. And there's kind of there is a kind of backstop to it, isn't it? Saying, well, if you don't make it work, we are prepared to step in, and we're prepared to make everyone get around the table and bang your heads together to do it. So there is a little bit of like, we'll do it. They're not going to make it a law. So it's not like in France, where I believe it's actually part of legislation there to do this sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, they were very much like, this should happen. It's a good thing. I think it would be the quickest and most efficient way to get money to the grassroots venues to stop them closing, which I think we've talked about somewhere like the Music Venue Trust has been very, very clear on the urgency of this. Like, it can't wait a year or two for a lot of venues to kind of not go out of business. It needs to be quick. And it's a weird one, isn't it? Because I think the original report, there was kind of timescales on it when they were saying we want this to happen by the autumn. But of course, then we had the general election, and that kind of threw everything back a bit. Yeah. So now I believe it's kind of early next year they're looking for this to be set up by. And that's where the government may step in if nothing's happened. But you probably know more than me about kind of how this sits within the live industry and what the other things are said.
Yeah, I mean, I looked through the report just before we come back to the levy, because there were some recommendations which they won't be supporting. So there were calls for a VAT cut on ticket prices, but government is saying they're not really that interested in this as an idea. They're not even that interested in another proposal, which was that the live music industry should do some research into the economic impact of a VAT cut. But that seems to have been waved away, as has the suggestion of a fan-led review, which was in the select committee's report, but government, for various reasons, aren't planning to take that any further either, which I think is a little bit of a shame. But the levy, isn't it? Yeah, because I mean, it's these, and it's happened with football, and I think the behaviour and the relationship of the fans with live music, I think some of that could be quite eye-opening. Maybe that's something we can come back to later. In response to this announcement, the head of the select committee, the original select committee, Dame Caroline Dinage, has said they would prefer a review of whether the levy is working or not sooner rather than later. So I think after 6 months rather than waiting a year to see whether it's had any impact, which I think just emphasises what you were saying about the urgency of the crisis, because let's not forget, it was only a couple of weeks ago that we reported that the Music Venue Trust are following the recent budget, which included a cut in business rate relief for small venues, and that's going to have a terrific impact. MV MVT was saying hundreds of venues could be in imminent peril if nothing is done. So anyway, the government would like to see the industry take action, as you say, rather than putting this into some sort of statutory form, as they have in France, where you have to give up, the live industry gives up 3%. They're saying the live industry itself should implement this voluntary levy, which, I mean, just a quick word about this, because it's big news, and it's obviously a triumph for the Music Venue Trust. As you say, you've been campaigning on this for a very long time. But the only thing about the levy is, despite the public backing from government, I should add, and I don't want to put a downer on this, I don't want to dampen these celebrations, but I think there's still a bit of work to be done behind the scenes, just to work out how it's going to be brought in and how it will work in practice, because there is, I mean, it's not mentioned, I've not seen it mentioned anywhere, but there are, behind the scenes, there are some disagreements over the implementation and whether an industry-wide levy would actually even be legal, because, and it's all to do with competition law, because if the big promoters, if they all sat down and worked together on this to introduce a levy across the board, could they be considered to be working as a cartel, potentially increasing prices of tickets for customers? And if they do that, if they work in collusion to do this, I mean, even if it is as it is, it's for a good cause. But does that break the rules laid down by the Competitions Authority, the CMA? Because there is a body of opinion, including some lawyers, who say that the CMA will come down on promoters like a ton of bricks if they're seen to be working together. So it's all well and good, the government saying we support a levy, but I think there might have to be one or two frank conversations about the practicalities of how it's set up. That's one headache. I mean, one way around this, which has been put forward, is by arguing that it's not the promoters who will gain if ticket prices go up. So even if they're colluding together, they're not colluding together to increase their own profits, because the money will go to a charitable trust who will then pass it on to the venues and artists. But I can tell you one thing that I've learnt from the conversations behind the scenes around this, is when it comes to competition law, one lawyer will say that's fine, and then 2 days later, another lawyer will tell you, oh, no, it isn't. So until there is a definitive answer from DCMS and the CMA, I think it's a bit harder for the industry to, firstly agree to and then get on and deliver this levy. And so we shall see what happens. Having said all this, it's still, as I say, it's great news for the Music Venue Trust, who've campaigned on this for a couple of years now. And I think especially the momentum behind this campaign really increased with the closure of Bath Moles last year. I think that really led to them stepping up their work on the levy, which they are describing in the Music Venue Trust announcement of this news. They were saying this is the biggest shift in live music in 50 years. So, wow. Yeah, good week for the MVT, who also got another boost. You probably saw this as well when it was announced yesterday. We're recording this on Tuesday. The news came out on Monday that Katy Perry is the latest artist to commit to giving £1 of her ticket price to the Music Venue Trust. So £1 from all the tickets from Katy Perry's next UK tour will go to the MVT. I mean, I haven't, as it came out yesterday, I haven't had time to do all the maths. So I can't tell you. Have you? Do you know how many tickets and how much money that's potentially worth?
Well, the capacities of the 5 venues are just under 86,000 people in total. Right. If she sells out, because her latest music hasn't been doing that well in the charts. So, assuming so it's got 85,600 tickets in theory.
Really?
Yeah. But the best thing about this story that I didn't know, you assume big star doing a bit to support it, but do you know where her first UK concert was ever?
No, I don't.
It was the Water Rats in King's Cross.
Really?
Right at the start. And I don't mean in like a big artist plays a grungy small venue as a publicity stunt. It was right at the beginning when she was just coming out. She played the Water Rats and then she played to Scala. So she is actually an example of an arena act who genuinely did start off here in the small venues that will now be supported.
For people who've never been to the Water Rats in King's Cross, what does that hold? 200 people, possibly 250 maybe?
I used to go and see The Darkness there in their early days. I used to play at a friend's club. Of course I did.
Of course you did. Absolutely.
But yeah, you know, there's a YouTube video. You can go and search for Katy Perry playing the Water Rats, and it's really fascinating because she's on this tiny stage playing an acoustic guitar. You know, it's a far cry from an arena set, but it's good. It's a nice little circular thing back.
That entirely backs up what the Music Venue Trust have been saying, isn't it? About the pipeline of, you know, new music. It has to start somewhere before it makes its way to the arenas. Perry, of course, follows in the footsteps of Coldplay and Sam Fender in donating money from their forthcoming tours to the MVT. So some good news for the beleaguered live scene. If you have any thoughts on this or any of the stories this week, they're always welcome. You can email us at the podcast email address, which I'll give you at the end of the show, or get in touch via our various social media addresses.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Right, there are some big stat stories this week, which I know you're looking forward to, Stuart. So I'm just going to save up the Spotify one for just a second. Before we get to the latest Spotify financials, here's some headline figures for how the record industry in this country is doing as a whole, because apparently very well. The UK music industry's contribution to the economy hit a record £7.6 billion last year. How do we know this? Who's calculated these figures? Where have they come from?
Oh, just some bloke on the street who we met this morning, taking a co-worker. No, this is not. This is some blokes and women at UK Music. So this is the umbrella body for the music industry. It covers live, it covers recorded, it covers everything. And they do this annual economic report, which kind of, and we've talked about this before. The dynamic is usually, here's all the way we're growing and we're big and important, and it's telling government, look how good this industry is, how good it is, while also saying, but we're also worried about X, Y, and Z. Please help us with this. And this report falls into that kind of dynamic. So, as you say, 7.6 billion quid is the contribution to the economy, and that's up 13% year on year. That includes 4.6 billion quid of exports, which is another record high, right. And that's up 15%. And then, the industry employed 216,000 people last year, which is up 3% and then a new high, which I think is kind of significant because during COVID, I think people talked a lot about job losses and people were leaving the live industry especially. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the people employed by music industry, that is going up. And so it is this thing of like saying, look at all the big numbers, look at the growth. This is a really healthy industry. It's worth the government backing it. And then the report also talks about grassroots venues closing, festivals shutting down. It talks about something we talked about recently about UK artists' streams globally falling in terms of the share of the open market. It mentions Brexit, which I was quite interested in because I don't know what you think about this, but in politics, Brexit's kind of become this thing no one talks about really, isn't it? Like Labour have been quite shy of mentioning it for fear of being accused of, wanting to go back into Europe. And people who supported Brexit have been quite shy of talking about it because it's been a terrible disaster in some ways. But music is the key. I think this report talks about the fact that artists have been losing out because of some of the red tape. So that's kind of interesting. And it mentions AI regulation, and it mentions giving children free access to music making, and it talks about the cap on secondary ticketing prices. So it's kind of we're growing, these are things are great, but here's what we want you as a government to do. So it's that sort of double prong message. But it's kind of, and weird to me that, well, not weird, but interesting to me that music exports are up 15% with a record high, but there is this worry, oh, hang on, but our artists' share of streams is falling. So that's one interesting parallel message, I think, where we're having to sort of talk about the good, but also warning about trouble ahead if we don't get more support in various ways.
We'll come back to music exports. If you're an aspiring artist, we have something on the infamous Megs scheme coming up later on. We must do this though, because this is where I imagine and hope I'm not speaking too freely on your behalf, listeners, but I imagine some of you will be gritting your teeth or grinding your teeth during this next story, which is the latest Spotify figures. It seems Spotify now has 252 million premium subscribers and 402 million users of its free ad-supported service. As a result of this, what's this done then to Spotify's share price, and who's going to benefit from these figures? Maybe run through the actual stats first and then tell us the financial implications.
Okay, yeah. So let's do numbers. So yeah, like you say, 252 million subscribers. That's up 12% from this time last year. 402 million free listeners. That's up 11%. So there's now 640 million people around the world listening to Spotify, which I remember the days when it was set up in the early days of streaming, when this idea of having 100 million people paying for streaming was kind of a pie in the sky dream.
Yeah.
And now the biggest service alone has 252 million pairs. So in the big long-term story, that's kind of quite big and good. Its revenues are up 19%. So Spotify made around 3.3 billion quid last quarter. And this is quite important. It had a record quarterly operating profit of 454 million.
Right.
And the reason I pull that out is, like, a lot of people still have this idea in their heads of Spotify as being, it makes massive losses. It loses money every quarter. But actually this year that has turned around. And actually the CEO, Daniel Ek, said in their earnings call, this is going to be our first full year of profitability. And so they've pulled on some levers, they've spent less, they've made some layoffs, they've done a bunch of things to kind of stop spending as much money.
Yeah.
And they're now profitable. And that is a big turnaround. The other thing, you mentioned the share price. I mean, I took a look actually at the beginning of this year. Based on its share price, Spotify was worth $37.2 billion. That was its kind of market cap.
Right.
Now it's worth $92 billion.
Crikey.
So it's not quite tripled in share price, but this year it had gone down the previous year, and that was the thing of Spotify's share price is falling. This year it's gone up. And that is something that Wall Street loves, but it's something in the music industry. Obviously, it sparks discussion when people are criticizing Spotify for other things like artist payments.
Yeah, of course. So the last time, or one of the last times we reported on their financials, I think Daniel Ek himself offloaded quite a few shares. Has that happened again now that the shares have reached this new level? Now they're back up to being, well, as you say, nearly 3 times as much as they were worth at the start of the year. Is the temptation maybe to cash out for some of them?
Well, that's happened, yeah. So as a public company, they have to declare when people connected to the company are selling a bunch of shares. Right. So in the days after the financials, Daniel Ek sold 75,000 shares, which is valued about $35.8 million. His co-founder, though, so the guy called Martin Lauritsen, who was the co-founder of Spotify, he sold company owned by him sold 960,000 shares nearly for $383.75 million, which as Christmas bonuses go. Yeah. I mean, that's, there's going to be some good present. But then, and a bunch of other executives and directors of companies sold shares for multi-millions, so this is where I make everyone grit their teeth maybe even more. Because this is kind of normal. Like, this is normal for a public company. Like, the executives and directors get shares as part of their packages, and the responsible time to sell them is after you do your quarterly financials, because you're not using secret insider information to kind of sell them at investment. You declare the financials, everything's public, and then people will sell. So it is normal. And when you look at how Spotify's valuation has grown, how the share price has grown, this is not an unexpected phenomenon that the people who've been given those shares sell them off, and this is part. But it does, I mean, the optics of it in the music industry are always the same. I think people look at that and go, look, that guy who co-founded it has made $83 million from his shares, but artists are getting paid pennies. And that is the kind of the tone of debate sometimes. And there was another little story, another filing this week, actually. We've talked about it before, they're kind of mechanical royalties in the US, where they reclassified themselves as a bundle because they had audiobooks. That means paying lower royalties to publishers. And in a filing this week, they said, yes, actually, that's been 94 million euros. So that's the amount they've paid. That's the amount they've not had to pay publishers in the US because of this change in how they classify themselves. So you've got that awkward juxtaposition of like, here's how much less we're paying publishers than we would have done. Here's how much money people are saying. So even though no one's done anything wrong, there's no underhand shady behavior. It's what happens with public companies. Yeah. It's going to filter into that debate, I think. What do you think? I mean, I think you were saying, speaking for the listeners, what do you think about when you see these different figures? And
obviously, they look shockingly big, don't they? I mean, if you go back to the start, you had to have faith in Spotify. Someone had to put the money in. Someone had to start it. It's been successful. Therefore, the person who helped at the start reaps the benefits of its success. But as you say, the optics are strange, and also that move where you should probably just run through that again, just in case new listeners don't know what we're talking about. But there was, yes, they reclassified certain parts of their service into this bundle thing. So when they added audiobooks, there was a technicality which meant that they didn't have to pay the music publishers as much in royalties. Is that about right?
That is it, yeah. So it's all, again, not illegal. Well, there's discussions about how legal it is, but in the US system, if you're a bundle, if you have music with other stuff, you pay lower mechanical royalties because you're not just a music service. Right. And there was a huge argument about this, partly because of what they did, but also that I think publishers said it was sprung on them. Suddenly one day said, we're paying low royalties, thank you, goodbye. And again, all this, I mean, I always have this view of I'm observing this and reporting on it. Like, I don't sit there with a pitchfork or a placard. But I do see that when you have a figure about people making money on one side and when you have a debate about artists on the other side, I think it's one of those challenges, really. Because, I mean, Wall Street loves it. If Spotify makes a profit, its share price goes up. It loves big bonuses it thinks are deserved. But it's also, the company is also operating in this area where it's arguing to musicians, well, we pay off for you and here's how and here's how. And,
I think when the two bits of news come at the same time, and if they're saying, look, we've paid 90, how much less are they paying now? They've reclassified their service as a bundle.
But basically, they said that they're being sued over this by an organisation in the US. So they said if they win this lawsuit, we'll have to pay 94 million euros more royalties.
So the thing is, their profitability has benefited from the fact that they've changed this service, which means they're paying less in royalties to artists. So the profitability is helped by moves like this, where they've basically not paid out £90 million. That's a real sticking point, isn't it? Because that's basically saying we're more profitable because we've done this thing where we pay you less. That's not possibly a good look. I understand everything else is fair in terms of the way business is conducted, but there are times where, particularly this week, because isn't Amazon doing a similar thing? Amazon Music, aren't they adding audiobooks? Are they going down the same route?
Yeah, so as we're talking, this is about to be announced. When this comes out, it will have it in advance. So Amazon owns a music streaming service, Amazon Music Unlimited, and it also owns Audible, the audiobook service. So that's an Amazon company. Yeah. And so what's happened is they say, right, if you're on Amazon Music Unlimited, it's in the UK and US and Canada for now. You can choose any book from Audible, any audiobook from Audible, and listen to that as part of your music subscription.
Okay.
And if you want more than one, you have to subscribe to Audible or pay for it. But yeah, so when it's essentially it's a different kind of system to when Spotify added audiobooks, but essentially it's the same. Audiobooks are now part of your music subscription.
Right.
And when Spotify did that, like we've talked, it made it a bundle, lower mechanical royalties, all hell broke loose. And so last night ahead of this news, they did a pre-briefing for journalists. So I interviewed Amazon's Steve Boom, who's their boss of audio. And I asked him, like, what does this mean? Like, are you going to be a bundle too? Are you going to pay lower royalties? Will the publishers be waving pitchforks at you as well? And he kind of parried and said, oh, well, we're keen to work with as a partnership. But he didn't really say yes or no. But then, ahead of this story coming out, the NMPA, who are the chief kind of antagonists of Spotify in the US, they're the Publishers Association over there. They've been very critical, saying they're screwing songwriters. They put a statement out to use with the story saying, we're optimistic about the Amazon bundle. Amazon is engaged with music publishing and songwriting industry in a respectful and productive way. So it's and they also said we don't expect this to decrease revenue for songwriters. So it's kind of interesting. Like this thing that Amazon's doing is logical. Like they have audiobooks over here, they have music over here. Bring them together in some form so you can listen to at least one audiobook a month.
Yeah.
But it's also the NMPA is using it as another sort of stick to beat Spotify with, saying, look, they're doing this in a way we like, so it's possible, and you didn't. So it's gonna reignite that conversation about how Spotify did it and why Amazon is doing it differently and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's kind of I think every narrative needs goodies and baddies, doesn't it? I think and that's the kind of narrative being set up here, that you can add audiobooks to music service in a nice way for publishers' point of view, or a not nice way. And Amazon is currently in a good.
Do you know what? I think they should just take it in turns. I think all those streaming services should just have a month where they're the bad guys. Because I mean, constantly it appears to be Spotify, but let's bring in Apple, Amazon. Let's all have a go. Let's just share the burden of being the bad guy.
Well, that's it, because we talked. There was a thing earlier this year. Spotify puts out an annual report called Loud and Clear, where it's like, look at all the money we're paying to musicians, and that's its moment of like, look, we are the good guys, really. So you're right. There is a certain extent this of Spotify tries to get on the right side of the debate sometimes, and it's it's ongoing. But yeah, I mean, I think that I'm interested because I don't listen to audiobooks. I don't know if you do.
Yeah, I do.
I've never. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious, and it's always been like, I don't know if I've got another £8-9 a month for a different subscription. That's what's put me off, really. Like I have a bunch. I pay for stuff, and I have a bunch of subscriptions. I have Netflix, Spotify, and so on. So I'm curious to sort of see because I love reading. I love reading books, but I've never got into audiobooks. So when these come into music for me, I'm like, oh, I can try it out. I can see if I like this way of, well, it's not reading, is it? Listening.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're trying to tease people like you into opening up the wallets again, I think.
Behind the bright lights and adrenaline of pro sports is an equally exciting world of negotiations and deal making.
That's what we cover each week on our podcast, The Deal.
I'm Alex Rodriguez, former baseball player turned business executive.
And I'm Jason Kelly, chief correspondent for Bloomberg Originals. Over the next couple months, we'll hear from all-stars like Jay Williams.
I want to be an owner one day.
Billie Jean King.
Learn the business.
And so many more. Listen to The Deal on Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
I don't think these are bad guys. Certainly you were very excited by this. Social music service Hangout, who I'd never come across. Hangout has gone live. What is Hangout, and why should it be of interest to our listeners? What's the story?
Okay, so how people might reminisce about post-punk bands of the 1980s, like music fans.
Yeah, I am very much aware of that. Yeah,
but this is the equivalent for music startups. So back in 2011, there was a company called Turntable FM. I don't know if you ever heard of it at the time.
Right. No, I don't think I did.
It was an avatar chat room, which is where I might start losing you. But you'd start creating your little cartoon character, and you'd go into this visual chat room, and you could DJ. You could choose songs to play to everyone else who's in that room, and people could chat. So it was like a sort of chat room where you're all little characters and you played music to each other. And for about a year, it was the hottest thing in music tech. It was like, wow, we're all going to be little avatars DJing to one another forever.
Mm.
And this service, Turntable FM, it was really popular. And then 2 years later, it shut down, partly because it eventually got licensing deals with labels and it couldn't make the numbers work. There wasn't enough money coming in to... Anyway, so one of the people who was involved in an early stage in that has basically brought the idea back as something called Hangout. So it's a guy called Joseph Perler. He was in Turntable FM very early, one of the staff there. And it's the same thing. It's you create a little cartoon figure, you go into a little chat room, you DJ to your friends or strangers. But this time it's got label deals from the start. So it's kind of on a legal footing. It's all sorted from the day one. And it's kind of fun. I'm a sucker for things like this. Whenever there's a kind of cool, fun new service, I'm like, wow, that's cool. But we were in it last week, kind of a Music Ally team. we were kind of in there DJing to each other, which again, I mean, it just reminds you of why playing records to friends is fun.
Yeah,
that's just an age-old thing of having people around to your house or your room, at your university or wherever, and playing the music. Like, this is just trying to make that digital, which I know some people were like, I would rather have my friends there in front of me, and that's fair enough. So the only question I have about this is, I wonder if it's going to just appeal to people like me who remember Turntable FM and are nostalgic for it. Like people remember MySpace fondly and want something like that, because I think if you're making this for young people, you probably build it in Fortnite or in Roblox or in one of these platforms where everyone is, tens of millions of kids are already playing and chatting. So that's my kind of one question: is this is a fun idea, but I wonder if you go somewhere where those people are already, rather than trying to get into a new thing. But
I know what I'm wondering. What is your DJ avatar?
Oh, so I'm a penguin currently. It gives you.
I don't know why I asked.
It gives you all these human sort of cartoons to choose from, and I'm like, well, none of them look like me, and but why not pick an animal?
But the penguin does.
Well, you might as well go, if you're not going to be, not going to be a human, doesn't look like you might as well be an animal that. But the funniest, the thing I love about it, a little touch, is when you're DJing in this room, your avatar starts sort of bopping up and down, like a DJ who's enjoying its thing. And the other people who are DJing with you, they just stand there motionless, like they're really unimpressed, unless they tap on like a green thumbs up, in which case they start bopping in time with you. So,
wow, tough crowd. This is all the pressure of when I go out and do a DJ set, but in the comfort of my own room.
Well, exactly.
Anyway, I might give that a go. Hangout. We've got a couple more stories. Well, actually, this one is less of a story and more of a public information service, really. If you happen to be an aspiring musician, the UK's Music Export Growth Scheme is opening up for new applications once again. MEGS is back. Again, for newer listeners who are probably already drowning in acronyms this week, tell us about MEGS, Stuart, and what we can get out of it.
Do you know, MEGS is that rare thing, and it's something done by the UK music industry that no one fights about. Although, having said that, we'll probably get a letter now for someone saying, I think MEGS is terrible. But it's one of those things genuinely recommend it's a universally good thing. So it's a fund, basically, that independent artists and the companies they work with can apply to kind of assist them with marketing campaigns, is the wording. So if they're doing stuff internationally, if they're going on a tour to the US, or if they're preparing a release campaign somewhere else in the world, they can apply. They can get a grant of between £5,000 and £50,000, and they can use that to help them build their audience overseas. And it's got some good names, like Self Esteem did it, Dave, Jungle, Wolf Alice, K Tempest, Bicep, Biba Doobie, Young Fathers and Ezra Collective, and Rina Sawayama. So some artists who have been proven, have had success on the global stage from Britain, got money from this scheme early on. So I think it's the 23rd round of it now. So it's been going a long time, and the government has backed it with some extra cash fairly recently. You could apply to it, say, this is my plan, this is what I want to use the money for. And they reckon, this is something the BPI, the labels body, talks about because it runs it, that every pound spent on this scheme, they reckon it's generated £14 back in earnings by those artists. So in terms of, I was going to say bang for your buck, but we need like a British phrase, don't we, for bang for your buck? I don't know, like punch for your pounds or something. But but like it's this thing that's actually worked, and it's helped British artists kind of, with their international ambitions. So if you are in that position now, you can search for MEGS and go and apply.
Excellent. And finally for this week, the Grateful Dead's Jerry Garcia is the latest AI-generated voice to be added to 11 Labs' roster of dead celebrities who can read out articles, audiobooks, and newsletters in its mobile app. Here you go. What's the point of this?
What is the point? It's an eerie thing, but it's like a new part of this AI future we're heading into, like it or not.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean, 11 Labs is an interesting company. So it's a company that's got like a reader app. So they'll read out to you, like say, articles, audiobooks, newsletters, even PDF files. And the twist being it's dead celebrities' voices reading it out that they've recreated using AI. So, like, I wrote about them earlier this year when they announced they had like Judy Garland and James Dean and Burt Reynolds, like AI versions of them to read to you. But now they have Jerry Garcia too, which the important thing about this is all of this is licensed. So they've worked with the estates of these celebrities and got their permission. They often have quotes from their children who often run these estates saying, we really approve of this. It's a really nice thing. But it is weird. Like Jerry Garcia reading things to you that he wouldn't have even known existed, maybe. Like I had him reading the Music Hello report on music startups, which, wasn't really his area. But we are at this time when people are talking a lot with worry about deepfakes, AI deepfakes. And, you could make Taylor Swift voice say things she never said.
Yeah.
And this is an example of there's an industry emerging as well that actually licenses it and says, well, maybe people want to have them reading things and maybe we can pay them their estate some money and do it. But I don't know, I was trying to think which dead musician I want reading bedtime stories or, articles to me. And it does seem, I couldn't think of anyone. I don't want Kurt Cobain reading out my emails to me or... Have you got any dead celebrities you'd like to?
I don't think I have. No, I mean maybe Joe Strummer. Maybe because he had a great voice, great speaking
he did, didn't he?
Voice. So that's maybe it's the reassuring West London voice of Joe Strummer. You see, it's always the way, isn't it? When you drop something like that on me, and I'll be in about 2 hours' time, I'll have a much better comprehensive list of dead people I would like reading those audiobooks.
Ranked order.
Yeah, there you go.
There was a thing a few years ago when it was I think it was Waze, or it was one of the navigation apps got Snoop Dogg to do the voice for that. So when you were hearing like turn left in 50 meters, it was Snoop Dogg's voice doing it. And there's going to be a whole world of this stuff. And the good thing will be if it's companies that are doing it by the book and saying, right, we're going to go to, and it could be Snoop Dogg, it could be Taylor Swift, it could be anyone you think of. If they decide they want to do it, they could license their AI clone to read whatever you want. So I think we'll see more of this. But yeah, it's slightly eerie to me that when it's dead celebrities, I feel weirdly more comfortable with living celebrities doing this. But, the Grateful Dead have a huge fan base still, don't they? They still have people who go and see the latest iteration live. So I think there'll be an audience for this. So yeah.
Well, that's where we'll leave it. On that bombshell, that's where we'll leave it for this episode. Can we just say thank you very much for listening, and we hope you've enjoyed the show. And if you have, please do subscribe to us in your podcast app and give us a review and a rating. And if you get the chance, if you have the opportunity to recommend us to any friends, family, or passing musos who might benefit from our attempts to explain the business of the music industry in terms of its politics and finance, then please do. We'd be very appreciative. And if you're feeling particularly benevolent, we now have a Patreon page as well where you can become a Price of Music fan or super fan for as little as £2 a month. That's patreon.com/thepriceofmusic if you'd like to find out more. Sign up now and you'll be eligible to take part in our Price of Music Christmas pop quiz if that happens. Which looks like it may be on the cards. As long as we can find a suitable date, that will be happening in the next month or so. And then last but not least, of course, if you have a question which you'd like answered on the show, anything music biz related that's always left you baffled, if you're an artist maybe looking for information or tips on how to navigate the finances of the music industry, just drop us an email at thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Till next time, take care, everybody. Cheerio.